Hi, my name is Steven, and today I want to talk about the architecture of modern web applications and how this stuff working together. And so maybe some people wondering which kind of magic is happening behind my phone. Like if I click a button on some modern applications like LinkedIn or Messenger or Facebook or Instagram, what's going to happen or which kind of activity I can trigger happening on somewhere to do the job for me. So that's a pretty good question. And so today we are gonna break down the magic into pieces and to say how different parts or components or infrastructures got composed up together to be a functional application. So you can see that I'm using a web app which is called Draw.io, and this is a very good web app for drawing or sketching out pictures very quickly and fast. So and also it's open source. So you can see that I've got a square here and I call it server. So just imagine this square is some server running in Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. And so the server is like a kind of powerful computer. But there's a main difference between the implementations of servers and your laptop, because your laptop is designed to only to give services to one person, who is you. But the server is not server. A company server probably gonna handle the requesting from all the corners in the world and to serve users concurrently at the same time. So it's gonna be a bit difference between server and laptop. But you can actually to think server as a person who is listening for the requesting from outside. So probably some people that like who has a good story and we can call that story as data in that server got stored somewhere, and some people from outside approach to that guy and to say, hey, can you give me a story? And that people will be like, sure, I'm gonna tell you a story. So this series of actions, we call this as internet. And a server just some people who a server is just like a person who are able to get requested and gives out some data or some words. That's it. And we also and sometimes we even just call server as backend. And at the same time we have got a front end, and probably this is your phone or your browser. So browser is a some interesting applications because it's got to implement some engine which can convert codes. So for the front end, we have got three types of codes. The first is HTML, and the second is CSS, and third is JS. So JS stands for JavaScript. So HTML is something that, so you can imagine the website as a tree data structure, and each component is like a kind of node on the tree or a leaf on the tree. So so at the beginning point of constructing a website is more like we start from the root of the tree. You have got a blank page, and that is the root of the tree, and you keep adding components, which is nodes on that tree, and this tree it grows up and branch out to be a functional user interface. So we are using HTML to specify the skeleton of a website or a web app, the front end, and the CSS is to style your components, to make it to be colorful and make it to be beautiful. That I think a web app is still gonna work without CSS, but CSS, the capacity of CSS is very powerful. It's not only gonna just add some colors to your components, but also it can do some animations or fancy stuff on your website. So JS is actually something can enable the capacity to your web components. Like if I want to this component to talk to the backend, like if I click a button, it's gonna make some requesting to my backend server. This should be implemented in the JavaScript, because JS is responsible for giving the capacity or ability for some logic to web components. And that's it. So So your browser will actually going to interpret those codes, for you to give you a graphical, because those are just English, not English words, just some codes, and you can't get a very good interface from just codes. This must to be done by some agent, and we have got this agent which is browser. This will interpret these codes into a window, and you can have a look of the graphical user interface and do some click button or input some text string into your browser, and so that's the basic interactions on the front end. And so on the back end, we are going to have a database. So this database is actually, it doesn't matter, you can have got MySQL or you have got other database. So database is more like a kind of storage to store data, but make it to be correct. For the MySQL or other stuff like PostgreSQL, they are not storage, they are a kind of management system. People coded up to efficiently manage the data operations in a storage, and we call that as database management system. And the most famous ones, probably MySQL, PostgreSQL, and so something can manage your data efficiently in your data storage. And after this, we usually have got a backend, probably going to be implemented in some robust languages like Java or Python. So this backend is going to run in the server, and the DB is going to run in the server as well. But those two guys actually, they can communicate with each other. So somehow you can implement some techniques in your backend. So for example, if your backend is Python and your database is MySQL, you can use a library which is called MySQL connector to connect with your database and to do some operations with your data. So those two guys can talk to each other. So this is backend, and also the backend, also you should implement some techniques to let backend able to handle the requests or listen to some requesting from the frontend. So this is frontend. Actually, the frontend will be first after you finish your coding. The frontend, backend, and database, you should push them together to the server. So, and somehow you make the backend able to handle the requesting from the frontend. So those two guys can talk to each other as well. So the most stuff we implement how to let the frontend talk to backend, probably we can do RESTful API. So API, like, let me search. So RESTful API is representational state transfer, and it's just some requesting that can make you to be able to your frontend and to your backend can talk with each other, and that's it. And so this is basically a architecture of the server got implemented, and in the future, someone in the browser to someone locally want to make some requesting to this server, the first thing the server is gonna do is return back this HTML and CSS and JS codes as a response to our browser. So you can basically have some understanding of, or have an overview of which sort of graphical user interface this application has. And after this, you click some buttons on the front end, and your front end, your codes, your JS codes is able to make requesting, which is probably RESTful API, to the backend to do some logic stuff, and the backend, if it's gonna process some data, it can store the data in the database. So I think that is pretty much a very simple demo of server architecture. But the real world architecture should be much more complicated, and I'm very happy to share that as well in the future. So thank you so much for listening.